Any early rain clears, some sunny spells here, 12 degrees, 8 degrees for Manchester, feeling cold in the wind further north across Scotland and Northern Ireland, although there will be some bright weather around and some sunny spells here and there away from the showers. Showers spill south during Thursday evening, clear spells follow. Again, hill snow affecting parts of Scotland, Northern England, North Wales as well, where we see those showers come and go. A frosty night on Friday into Saturday. It's going to be a fairly bright weekend for many, but there will be a chill in the mornings.
Europe is in the grip of the most devastating humanitarian crisis since World War II.
The people of Ukraine are facing unimaginable suffering
as their homes are destroyed and their loved ones are killed.
Millions of people are being forced to flee for their lives, carrying only their children, their pets, and the clothes on their back.
The pain, loss and destruction grows by the day.
The people of Ukraine urgently need our help.
Already a vast humanitarian operation is underway. Britain's Disasters Emergency Committee, or DEC, brings together 15 leading aid charities to respond to overseas disasters quickly and efficiently. These charities include the British Red Cross, CARE, Oxfam, Save the Children and World Vision.
Their teams are working on the ground in Ukraine and neighbouring countries to bring vital aid to those who need it most. If you can spare it, your gift to the DEC's humanitarian appeal will go a really long way.
£10 provides essential hygiene supplies for a person for a month.
£50 provides blankets for 4 families.
£100 provides emergency food for 2 families per month.
It's easy to give. You can donate online at dec.org.uk or call the 24-hour donation line on 0370 60 60 900. If you prefer to send a cheque, please post it to the Ukraine Humanitarian Appeal, PO Box 999, London, EC 3A 3AA. To give £10 on your mobile, simply text the word crisis to 70150. Standard network charges apply for calls and you must be 16 or over. Texts are charged at the standard network rate and your £10 donation will be added to your bill.
100% of your donation goes directly to the DEC to save lives and deliver critical support where it's needed.
And welcome once again to On the Money, where we're focused on the UK's cost of living crisis, helping you beat the squeeze. I'm Liam Halligan, and for the next hour, we'll be talking about that national insurance rise. Is it fair? Is it justified? Can we afford to pay? As household fuel bills spiral, the government launches a fracking review. Could shale gas be the answer to UK energy security? Plus, we just saw the worst March for new car sales in almost a quarter of a century. We asked the experts what's going on. All that and more on The Money after the GB News headlines with Rosie Wright.
Good afternoon, it's 2 minutes past 1. I'm Rosie Wright, here to keep you up to date on GB News. The Prime Minister says today's 1.25% rise in national insurance is unquestionably the right thing to do for our country and for the NHS. Well, that rise means Britain's tax burden has now risen to its highest point in 70 years. It's going to impact the income of millions of households. The government predicts £39 billion will be raised over the next 3 years, and Boris Johnson says it will help to reduce the NHS backlog.
We've now got backlogs, waiting lists of 6 million people. And that means there's everybody across the country knows somebody who's waiting for cancer treatment or some sort of procedure that is crucial for their health. And we've got to give our doctors and our nurses the wherewithal, the funding to deal with that.
The Ukrainian president has told the Irish Parliament Russia is using hunger as a weapon and is deliberately creating a food crisis. President Volodymyr Zelensky is calling for more rigid sanctions from the EU, saying leaders need to prioritise civilian losses. Well, the chairman of EU leaders, Charles Michel, says the European Union would have to introduce a ban on Russian oil and gas imports sooner or later. President Zelensky says he can't tolerate any indecisiveness from the West.
I'd like to ask you to convince EU partners to introduce even more rigid sanctions against Russia that would really make sure that the Russian war machine will stop. The only thing is that we're lacking is the principal approach of some leaders, political leaders, business leaders, who still think that war and war crimes is not something as horrific as financial losses.
Well, the governor of Ukraine's Luhansk region says 10 high-rise buildings are on fire after Russian shelling. He's urged residents to get out of the eastern region over concerns that Russian troops are preparing for a new offensive in the Donbass area, which includes Luhansk. In the encircled city of Mariupol, the latest British intelligence reveals heavy fighting and continued Russian airstrikes. Most of the 160,000 remaining residents in the city have no light, communication, medicine, heat or water, as Russian forces there have blocked humanitarian access. The Prime Minister has defended the government's decision to not include trans people in the proposed ban on conversion therapy. Speaking during a visit to a hospital, Boris Johnson said there were complexities and sensitivities which needed to be worked through. He added that he was sad at the reaction of LGBT plus groups who pulled out of a planned international conference in protest at the decision. Coronavirus case rates in England at the highest they've ever been. Experts from Imperial College London say a rising prevalence in older adults with the infection may increase hospitalisations and deaths despite high levels of vaccination. The two variants of Omicron have caused twin peaks in the pandemic this year, one in January, another in March. Married couples in England and Wales are now able to legally break up without having to attribute blame for the breakdown of their marriage. In the biggest overhaul of the law in half a century, no-fault divorce legislation comes into force today. Campaigners say that for families who want to break up amicably, it will help families move forward without conflict. Well, Georgina Chase is the head of family law at Slater & Gordon, and she told us that for many couples, it will be the end of the blame game.
I understand that for many people, they will see that this means that getting divorced is easier. But I think it's not necessarily easier because the law in relation to how to sort the finances and children hasn't changed. What it means is that it's taking that sting out. It's making it more accessible. Otherwise, if they've not been separated for 2 years or more, they're having to rely on the fault-based fact of unreasonable behaviour, which, of course, unnecessarily creates tension and increases hostility.
Ed Sheeran has called for the end of baseless claims against songwriters. Today, he won a High Court battle in a copyright case over his single Shape of You. Ed Sheeran has insisted he's always tried to be completely fair in crediting people who contribute to his albums. While posting on social media after the verdict, the singer said claims like this are too common and they're damaging to the songwriting industry.
Only so many notes and very few chords used in pop music. Coincidence is bound to happen. Hopefully we can all get back to writing songs rather than having to prove that we can write them.
You're up to date on GB News. I'll bring you more as it happens. Now let's head back to Liam for today's On the Money.
And welcome to On the Money. Coming up, well, the scores are in and taxes are rising. After last Friday's increase in fuel bills and council tax, today sees national insurance contributions increase. Is Rishi Sunak right to be raising taxes? Is it true, as the government says, that only the wealthy pay more? As household fuel bills spiral, the government launches a review into fracking, the controversial method for extracting shale gas. Could shale gas help with Britain's energy security? Plus, why are new car sales so slow? We just saw the worst March sales in 24 years. What's going on? And each day On the Money features an in-depth Money Talks interview with a business owner or policymaker. Well, today we're talking to a tech entrepreneur who's helping churches launch themselves into cyberspace. I kid you not. That's later in the show. And as ever, I want your questions, opinions, ideas. What do you think of the issues raised in today's On the Money? Do you back Rishi Sunak's tax increase? Email gbviews@gbnews.uk, tweet @gbnews, or tweet me personally @Liam Halligan. But whatever you do, stay with us, because this is GB News. I'm Liam Halligan, and you're On the Money. This country's heading for the biggest fall in living standards since the early 1950s. And for many, Rishi Sunak's spring statement last month did too little to offset that drop. The cost of living squeeze has been months in the making. Even before Vladimir Putin invaded Ukraine, UK inflation was a 30-year high. Now this conflict is causing fuel and food prices to skyrocket. And on top of that, we're enduring some pretty chunky tax rises. Last Friday, household fuel bills rose 54% on average to almost £2,000 a year. Council tax bills also increased last Friday by an average of 3%, but those in bands A to D, they get a £150 rebate. Now, the big news is that from today, national insurance contributions, what we call NICs for workers, go up 1.25 percentage points to 13.25%. But the threshold up to which you pay no NICs is also increasing by around £3,000 to £12,570. So that is a tax cut. The net result of the NIC rate rise and more generous threshold is that those earnings £38,000 or more will pay more, while those earning less will pay less. The government says taxes are rising to help tackle the NHS waiting list backlog, while stressing that those on lower incomes will pay less.
We will all benefit from the levy, the increased funding and the services that will provide. We will all benefit from that. But in terms of paying for this, it does actually fall on the broadest shoulders. The 15% highest earners will pay over half the levy. And because of the national insurance tax cut that the Chancellor announced a couple of weeks ago, 70% of workers will be paying less national insurance, including taking account of this levy.
Home Secretary Sajid Javid there, himself a former Chancellor, and what he said is all very well. But while the NIC rate rise kicks in today, the threshold rise, the bit that makes sure those on lower incomes pay less, that doesn't happen until July. So for the next 3 months, when this cost of living squeeze really starts to bite, pretty much everyone will pay more in NICs. And if this tax rise is so important to pay for the NHS and social care, why has Sunak pledged effectively to reverse it in a year's time with his promised 2023-2024 pre-election income tax cut? To me, this NIC rise seems ill-timed and even cynical. A tax rise now so taxes can be cut with much fanfare before an election. Is that your opinion too? Anyway, that's our On the Money question. Whatever you think, and here it is. Is Rishi Sunak's NIC rise justified or not? Grown-up conversations with people who know their stuff. That's what we do here on The Money. That's why I'm delighted to welcome back to the show a British manufacturing legend. There he is, John Elliott. He's the founder and chairman of EBAC up there in the northeast, a company which manufactures dehumidifiers, water coolers and great British-made washing machines. We also have Claire Collins, owner of Fitch and Ramus Hairdressing. I like it. And that's in Cowbridge in South Wales. And here in the studio, it's Justin Urquhart-Stewart, friend of the show, co-founder of Regionally, our very own answer to Gordon Gekko. John Elliott, what do you think of this NIC rise? Is it justified?
Absolutely. The problem with Richie, he hasn't gone far enough. We've got to face reality. We've got an economy that's struggling. We've got debt that we can't repay. We've got to face reality. We've got to think about our obligations, not our entitlements.
That's fair enough, John, but you employ lots of people up there in the northeast. A lot of your fellow business leaders are calling this a tax on jobs because this NIC rise comes in not just for employees, many workers who are facing other increases in the bills they face, but also employers. Are you not feeling that?
No, but the cost will go to the customer. Ultimately, the cost will go to the customer, so we'll all pay. We've got to face reality. We've got to roll our sleeves up and do more. There's lots of vacancies all around the country. There's work to be done. Let's earn money rather than look for entitlements from government.
Claire Collins, you're not a manufacturing legend from the northeast of England, but you are a hairdressing legend from South Wales. What do you think of this NIC rise?
Well, it's going to have an effect. We are a tiny business, even, not just a small business, we are tiny and very exposed to any increases. It's going to have to be passed on to my customers. But again, it's a very fine line between how much I can pass on before it has an effect on our customer support. So we've only just come through the pandemic. We saw the light at the end of the tunnel, and now it looks like a very rocky road ahead.
How was the pandemic for you, Claire? I know I've been in touch with John Elliott a lot. I know while it was challenging for manufacturers, in the main, our manufacturing industry did carry on. That wasn't the same for customer-facing industries like yours, was it?
No, it was, it was a very frightening time initially. We had no idea of how we were going to get through it. I think during 2020, we traded in all for about 3 months. In Wales, we had a lockdown or a fire break in November, and then just to close at our busiest time in December with a full columns, booked up right until the Christmas Day, and then to be told that we had to close our doors again. It was, very challenging. Coming back then in March 2021, things seemed to be feeling a lot better. Our clients were in more of a positive frame of mind, looking forward to good times ahead. So that's why we were really looking forward to things doing well in the business. And now we have these other challenges lying ahead, not just NI, but also the rise in fuel and generally the cost of living. I employ young people, and they also have their challenges. So difficult times ahead.
John Elliott, what do you make of that? You are an entrepreneur to your fingertips. There's Claire Collins. She owns her own hairdressing salon. She employs local people. Her sector, they're not manufacturing, but they're providing an important social and beauty service for men and women alike. She's been absolutely hammered. She's clinging on to her business and her livelihood. Why should she be paying more national insurance now at a time when she's trying to keep her business open?
I understand that. Look, in manufacturing, it hasn't been easy. It still isn't. We've still got problems with supply chain problems. It's difficult. But the solution is to roll our sleeves up, all of us. We've got to just sort the economy out by doing more. There's jobs around, there's things to be done. That's where we've got to move ourselves to. We can't just expect the government to bail us out because it's our money. We've got to face reality. We've got tremendous debts. We've got to start paying them back. I would like the government to reduce waste in the government department. That's not going to happen, is it? So what we've got to do is increase taxes. There's no other alternative. Otherwise, the debt's going to get bigger and bigger. We can't even afford to pay the interest. That's going to get higher as well.
There you have it, Justin Urquhart, Stuart. The tale of two economies, really. You know, John Elliott is a big manufacturer. He's got a very successful business, and fair play to him. He's built it with his own bare hands, as he's told us when he's previously appeared on The Money. But there you have Claire Collins, who is an equally honest, equally worthy, equally deserving entrepreneur in her own right. And she's absolutely petrified of these huge tax rises.
And this is the key issue with this. We're tinkering with the tax system. Here is the moment where we know we've got a really complicated set of taxes. You were talking this morning earlier on the channel saying that national insurance, it's income tax by another name. Of course it is. We've got two lots of income tax. We make life more difficult for ourselves. We should be simplifying the tax codes, tax structures, making it more understandable. That way you can probably also try and make it fairer. And we've got the situation where we've got 3 months where people are all going to be having a tax rise. That's certainly not going to be fair. But add that to the complications of other issues we've got going around. You talked about fuel. We've got inflation going up. We've got interest rates going
Corporation up. Tax rise coming down the track next year from 19 to 25%. That's huge.
And you see, all of that, and then you add in the international issues you've got, whether it's fuel, whether it's to do with commodity prices and things like that. I'm afraid, and this is a bad warning, is we are heading for a recession, a global recession.
You really think that?
I really do think that.
So that's 2 successive quarters of shrinking economy.
Yeah.
We were meant to be in the middle of a V-shaped recovery. There was meant to be this incredible bounce back.
Well, it's the V.
The Treasury was saying until a couple of weeks ago, we're going to grow by 6% this year, faster than China.
We were laughing at that last year. We said it was a silly V-shape. Yeah, that's because people were flicking two fingers at us. That was not the right sort of V-shaped recovery. No, we need some consistency in growth. Good news, though, in Britain is we're still setting up more businesses.
We are.
Which is amazing in the face of all of this. But I'm afraid, John's absolutely right. We have to work our way out of this. You can't just magic the money away. But we can make life simpler. But I'm afraid what he's been doing with this is trying to play clever with the tax system, and people don't really understand it. All they do know is it's going to cost them more, and it gets to that one word that runs an economy: confidence.
Indeed. John, very briefly from you, because I do want to bring Claire Collins back in for the last word. Elevator pitch to Rishi Sunak. What's the one thing he should be doing now, apart from what he's already doing?
Too complicated. I would rather we raised VAT, because that's simpler. And only do it on goods, not food, and that means that people who buy more will pay more tax. We've got to simplify the tax system. That's not going to happen. Government's got to reduce waste. It's not going to happen.
Collins, we salute your entrepreneurial spirit. We know you're trying to keep your business on the straight and narrow in difficult circumstances. What's the one thing that you would say to Rishi Sunak if he was here now?
Well, I would have asked him to just have taken it easy, allowed small businesses like mine to look ahead, to prosper and to grow, whereas now I'm afraid it's going to have the adverse effect. I won't be employing any new team members coming up. I've really tightened my belt, and I'm all for working hard, as I've always done. But somewhere along the line, I just felt we needed to be steady as we go.
Well, Claire Collins of Fitch and Ramus Hairdressers there in Cowbridge in South Wales. And thank you also to John Elliott of EBAC, manufacturing legend up there in the Northeast. And, of course, Justin Urquhart-Stewart. This is On the Money with me, Liam Halligan. After the break, we'll be hearing from our Southeast reporter, Ellie Costello. She's been speaking to people in Essex about their take on that national insurance rise. Stay with us. You're On the Money.
Europe is in the grip of the most devastating humanitarian crisis since World War II.
The people of Ukraine are facing unimaginable suffering
as their homes are destroyed and their loved ones are killed.
Millions of people are being forced to flee for their lives, carrying only their children, their pets, and the clothes on their back.
The pain, loss and destruction grows by the day.
The people of Ukraine urgently need our help.
Already a vast humanitarian operation is underway. Britain's Disasters Emergency Committee, or DEC, brings together 15 leading aid charities to respond to overseas disasters quickly and efficiently. These charities include the British Red Cross, CARE, Oxfam, Save the Children, and World Vision.
Their teams are working on the ground in Ukraine and neighbouring countries to bring vital aid to those who need it most. If you can spare it, your gift to the DEC's humanitarian appeal will go a really long way.
£10 provides essential hygiene supplies for a person for a month.
£50 provides blankets for 4 families.
£100 provides emergency food for 2 families per month.
It's easy to give. You can donate online at dec.org.uk or call the 24-hour donation line on 0370 60 60 900. If you prefer to send a cheque, please post it to the Ukraine Humanitarian Appeal, PO Box 999, London, EC 3A 3AA. To give £10 on your mobile, simply text the word crisis to 70150. Standard network charges apply for calls, and you must be 16 or over. Texts are charged at the standard network rate, and your £10 donation will be added to your bill.
100% of your donation goes directly to the DEC to save lives and deliver critical support where it's needed.
Welcome back. It's 1:23. You're watching On the Money with me, Liam Halligan, here on GB TV, DAB+, digital radio and online. We're talking about that national insurance rise. The rate at which you pay national insurance is going up today. The threshold, which means the poor pay less, that doesn't go up until July. Yes, you heard it here first. Our South East reporter Ellie Costello's in Brentwood in Essex. Ellie, great to have you back on the show. How are people feeling about this national insurance rise in your neck of the woods?
Liam, it's not very welcome, let me tell you that. This is something that we're all going to see on our pay slips at the end of this month. This increased tax. Employees, businesses and the self-employed will be paying an extra 1.25p in every pound. It doesn't sound like a lot, but I'm sure when people see it on their pay slips at the end of the month, it's going to make a huge impact on what already is very difficult circumstances for many people with the rise in energy bills and the cost of living too. Now, the extra tax is, of course, earmarked for the government social care spending, but it is a really tough time for people. So I've been speaking to people on the high street about what they think about this national insurance rise. This is what they told me.
I think the national insurance rises were inevitable. They've got to pay for all the money they've spent out on COVID. Where else are they going to get money for their friends? I mean, all the contracts that have happened with the NHS that have for faulty goods and things like that, billions of pounds disappeared. They've got to make the income somewhere. It's like the household. You've got to balance the books.
Well, there are two ways of looking at it, really. One, that I've been paying national insurance all my working life, over 50 years or more, so you can think, well, I've paid my share. But these are different times, and the young people are struggling, and the NHS needs investment, as long as the money actually goes to what it's supposed to go to.
The country is in a total mess. I don't know who could come in to make it better, but we need change.
So as you just heard there, Liam, everyone seems to be in agreement that the NHS and social care needs investment, but lots of conversation here about whether taxing people in this way and at this time, whether that's the right thing to do at all.
Ellie Costello there in Brentwood in Essex. As I said, Ellie, great to have you back on the show. Now, you are on the money with me, Liam Halligan, and as petrol prices soar, some of us are starting to use our cars less. There also seems to be a bit of reluctance to buy new cars, or perhaps, given global supply chain issues, new cars just aren't available. Either way, the British car industry saw its worst March for new vehicle sales in 24 years. That's according to the industry oracle, the Society of Motor Manufacturers and Traders, who found just over 243,000 new cars were registered last month, 14% down on March 2021. But the registration of new electric cars was up 76%. I'm joined now by Mike Hawes, who is the CEO of the SMMT, that's the Society of Motor Manufacturers and Traders. We also have James Baggott, founder and editor-in-chief of Car Dealer magazine and the CEO of parent company Bays Group, and we can't get rid of him. Justin's still hanging around in the studio, lurking. Going to hit us with more of his opinions. Let's go to you, Mike. Mike, great to have you on the show. SMMT, as I said, a very authoritative source of information on our car industry. Is it because people don't want to buy new cars because they're feeling the squeeze? Is it because new cars aren't available because of semiconductor shortages? Or is it a bit of both?
Well, at the moment, Liam, it is primarily a supply issue. We know the demand is there. Order books are very strong across the industry, but it's the supply. We're still, as an industry, suffering a degree of long COVID. The pandemic, which has hit Asia, perhaps after Europe, caused a lot of the semiconductor manufacturers to close down. And so the supply into the industry was curtailed. That's led to all sorts of turbulence in the industry and problems getting back to normal levels of production. We do expect this to continue, certainly over this year, but it will ease as the year goes on. But certainly the order books are strong. It is just primarily a supply chain issue at the moment.
James Baggott, you eat, sleep and breathe the car industry, of course, editing, as you do, Car Dealer magazine. How acute is this shortage? How long are people having to wait for their new cars?
Well, it depends really what manufacturer and which car dealership you go into, but I mean, the problem is very real. Most car manufacturers are quoting a wait of around 6 months at the moment, but I have heard waits of up to 18 months. And in fact, some manufacturers are not actually taking orders for some cars. The problem's the problem's so acute there. I mean, it depends really, as I say, which manufacturer it is. Volkswagen Group was particularly badly hit by it with their brands Audi, Volkswagen, Skoda and Seat. BMW and Mercedes have been hit in Germany, shutting their factories there. And Oxford, the mini plant there, is also shut for a couple of weeks, all due to these parts problems. And it's not just those semiconductors. There's parts problems as a result of the war in Ukraine. Wiring looms especially were made there, and they are causing problems as well. So it doesn't look like the problem's going to get better anytime soon.
Mike, let's go back to you. It caught my eye that the sales of electric cars were 76% up, but 76% up from a pretty low base. What sort of share of new cars that are being bought now are electric cars?
It's for the last month, it was about 16%. That's pure electric. But if you add in plug-in hybrids and indeed hybrids, that's sort of the totality of electrified vehicles. It's about 1 in 3, about a third of new car sales are electrified.
Wow.
But what did you rightly say there? You're just seeing this fantastic growth in battery electric vehicles. We sold more in March than we did in all of 2019. And that trend is continuing. And so we need that to continue, not just for the industry, which has invested billions in the technology, but if you are to achieve your net zero goals as a society, decarbonising road transport is fundamental to that.
James, we've obviously got this big spike in electric car sales. It's going to rise. There's a proposal by government to basically ban sales of new cars unless they're electric by 2030. So new petrol and diesel cars won't be around. What do you and your readers think of the state of the charging infrastructure at the moment? Obviously, there's not enough. Obviously, it's being rolled out. But how widespread is what we call in the car trade range anxiety? Concern basically you're going to run out of charge and have nowhere to plug in.
Look, well, I mean, I'm running an electric car at the moment and writing about it regularly, and I've had a number of problems charging it when it comes to public charging points. The amount that you go to and don't actually work is incredibly disappointing. I find that running an electric car and charging it at home makes a big difference. And I mean, most people don't actually use their cars for long distance on a daily basis. Electric cars do make sense for a huge number of people. And as you rightly point out, that 2030 ban is just around the corner. And people are actually looking for alternatives to combustion engines now. And that is why we are seeing a big rise in those EV sales. I mean, the other reason we're seeing a big rise is actually a lot of manufacturers are focusing on making these electric cars at the moment. They've got targets to hit when it comes to emissions, which means that they want to put the semiconductors that they can get hold of into these electric vehicles. And it means that the supply of these electric cars are actually a little bit more plentiful in car dealers. So there's a number of different reasons there. But if you are looking at buying an electric car, you really do need to consider how you're going to charge it, because right now the charging infrastructure across the UK is pretty woeful.
Justin, you won't get a better conversation, a more informed conversation about the car industry than with these two guys. You've got the SMMT there, you've got the bloke that runs Car Dealer magazine. What caught your ear, if I may say so?
It's that one, 18 months.
Yeah.
18, you could have had 2 children in that time before I can get a car.
Yeah.
No, even the price of second-hand cars have gone through the roof. All that means that I'm actually going to sit there and stick with my 1964 Morris Traveller because I know it still works. And I can't change that. But
Has it got sort of wooden panelling?
It's got wooden panelling. It's even got grass growing out of it.
Has it got those indicators that sort of flip out at the side?
I know it's not. I'm not that old. I know. Look, it's not quite that old.
Justin Urquhart-Stewart, there, co-founder of Regionally, and indeed car dealer editor-in-chief James Baggott, and Mike Hawes of the Society of Motor Manufacturers and Traders. I learned a huge amount during that discussion. Thank you all. This is On the Money with me, Liam Halligan. Coming up is today's Money Talks interview with Carl Cottington, the man passionate about helping churches to use the web, sending the churches into cyberspace. But first, the GB News headlines with Rosie Bunn.
Good afternoon, it's 1:33. I'm Rosie Wright, here to get you up to date. The Prime Minister says today's 1.25% rise in national insurance is unquestionably the right thing to do for our country and the NHS. Well, Britain's tax burden has now risen to its highest point in 70 years. The government says £39 billion will be raised over the next 3 years, helping to reduce the NHS backlog. The Ukrainian president has told the Irish Parliament Russia is using hunger as a weapon and deliberately creating a food crisis. He's called for more rigid sanctions from the EU.
I'd like to ask you to convince EU partners to introduce even more rigid sanctions against Russia that would really make sure that the Russian war machine will stop. The only thing is that we're lacking is the principal approach of some leaders, political leaders, business leaders, who still think that war and war crimes is not something as horrific as financial losses.
Pope Francis has condemned what he's described as the massacre of Bucha. Holding up the Ukrainian flag, he said it had been sent to him from the town. Recent footage has shown images of tied-up bodies, a mass grave and other signs of executions. Now, the UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson has defended the government's decision to not include trans people in the proposed ban on conversion therapy. Speaking during a hospital visit, Boris Johnson said there were complexities and sensitivities which needed to be worked through. Coronavirus case rates in England are at the highest they've ever been. Experts from Imperial College London say a rising prevalence in older adults getting the infection may increase hospitalisations and deaths despite high levels of vaccination. Ed Sheeran has called for the end of baseless claims against songwriters after winning a High Court battle in the copyright case of his song Shape of You. In a video he posted on social media, the singer said claims like this are too common and they're damaging to the songwriting industry. Sheeran and his Shape of You co-writers denied copying parts of the 2015 song by Sammy Chokri after Chokri claimed the tracks were surprisingly similar. You're up to date on GB News. We're on your TV, online and radio. Shortly, we'll be back to Liam for On the Money.
Europe is in the grip of the most devastating humanitarian crisis since World War II.
The people of Ukraine are facing unimaginable suffering
as their homes are destroyed and their loved ones are killed.
Millions of people are being forced to flee for their lives, carrying only their children, their pets, and the clothes on their back.
The pain, loss, and destruction grows by the day.
The people of Ukraine urgently need our help.
Already a vast humanitarian operation is underway. Britain's Disasters Emergency Committee, or DEC, brings together 15 leading aid charities to respond to overseas disasters quickly and efficiently. These charities include the British Red Cross, CARE, Oxfam, Save the Children, and World Vision.
Their teams are working on the ground in Ukraine and neighbouring countries to bring vital aid to those who need it most. If you can spare it, your gift to the DEC's humanitarian appeal will go a really long way.
£10 provides essential hygiene supplies for a person for a month.
£50 provides blankets for 4 families.
£100 provides emergency food for 2 families per month.
It's easy to give. You can donate online at dec.org.uk or call the 24-hour donation line on 0370 60 60 900. If you prefer to send a cheque, please post it to the Ukraine Humanitarian Appeal, PO Box 999, London, EC 3A 3AA. To give £10 on your mobile, simply text the word crisis to 70150. Standard network charges apply for calls and you must be 16 or over. Texts are charged at the standard network rate and your £10 donation will be added to your bill.
100% of your donation goes directly to the DEC to save lives and deliver critical support where it's needed.
Welcome back. You're on the money. Now, millions of households across Britain are falling into fuel poverty, struggling to pay energy bills after the price cap for households was raised by 54% last Friday. The reality is, though, with wholesale oil and gas prices up due to the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, utility bills are likely to rise again when that Ofgem energy price cap is reset this autumn. Well, joining me now is Adam Scorer, CEO of National Energy Action. Adam, you're often on the show. We're often talking about energy bills. We haven't talked since last Friday. What are you hearing?
Well, the reality has hit. People are seeing the new bill estimates come through from their suppliers. The reality of what it's doing to their budgets is starting to emerge. And we're seeing many more people trying to figure out what they can do, either in practical terms to reduce their expenditure or to try and find greater sources of support and advice. And there's precious little we can do. I think we're all waiting to see what the Prime Minister is due to say tomorrow with his energy security strategy, and to see whether there's anything in that that's a crumb of comfort for people who are going to struggle to pay their bills.
Say, Adam, I was pretty vocal after Rishi Sunak sat down when he delivered his spring statement at the end of last month, when he didn't do anything in addition, extra for households struggling with their energy bills. There was a package of measures. There is a package of measures. The government says it's $9 billion, council tax rebates and so on. You know, a loan system where people effectively are forced to borrow money, but nothing for people on the lowest incomes. No upgrade in benefits, for instance. Do you think we could see more tomorrow?
Perhaps not tomorrow on benefits, but it's got to happen. I mean, the scale of the impact is so great. The Chancellor has said he's going to wait to see what prices are going to do in October. We know they're going to rise. The package that's been brought in for the last price rise is woefully inadequate. That's the thing that needs to be improved. And then we need to see through the spring, summer and autumn what the action plan is to make sure we don't get hit even harder come the winter. But, you know, there's something that the Chancellor and the Prime Minister must be announcing tomorrow. It should be the number one item on their energy strategy, and it's about demand reduction. It's the sweet spot. It's the sweet spot between energy resilience, between acting quickly, reducing bills, and going towards net zero. It means you need less, you use less, you pay less, and you owe less by making our homes and businesses more energy efficient. And to be honest with him, it's the only way in which you put the needs of homeowners, everybody, not just those on the lowest incomes, at the heart of your strategy. That must be number one on the list, but it doesn't seem like that's going to be the focus of the Prime Minister's announcement tomorrow.
We've talked about things you can do. There's not much you can do in terms of getting a better deal from your suppliers because that cap has just come up. People should check if they're eligible for benefits. People should talk to the Citizens Advice Bureau, talk to their suppliers. Maybe they can get a stay of execution, get a freeze on their payments as they try and, reassess their finances. It strikes me, though, the government could act now, not just to scrap VAT on household fuel bills, as we've been campaigning here on The Money for a long time. They could take those renewable levies off household bills. 25% roughly of your electricity bill is a renewable subsidy, often to a big landowner or a big firm making renewable energy.
They could absolutely do that. Some of those kind of levies should be taken off consumers' bills and then maybe put onto general taxation. It's still got to be paid for, but it's a much fairer way of doing it. The one thing I think the Chancellor could do and should do immediately is to say, if you're on a real low income, if you're in receipt of certain welfare benefits, you don't need to pay the £200 back. Let's just exempt them from those sorts of costs. The Chancellor decided and was pretty explicit about it. He's going to try and do a little bit for everybody, and he's not going to go deep for the people who need it the most. I think the clamour from all sides of the political spectrum that that's not sustainable. That's not sustainable, and it's the wrong priorities. I hope that we'll see the Chancellor and the government do a volte-face on that and bring greater support in. You're right, there are things they could do now to ease the pain. Waiting until we get to September, when we see just how colossal the price rises in October would be, is time wasted. It's time wasted when you could be planning, understanding what works, what levers you can pull to make life easier for people on the lowest incomes, get a decent plan in place well before the winter Because as we keep saying, the cost isn't just on people's budgets. People get ill. People's mental health deteriorates. And we know in a good year, 10,000 people die every year from the effect of a cold home. We should be doing whatever we can to make sure that number doesn't grow.
Adam Scorer, always welcome on this show. You are from National Energy Action Campaign Group. Well, we are in the midst of this cost of living squeeze, high energy prices. Many can't heat their home, as Adam just said. And so now more than ever, we need to start utilising our resources at home on the domestic front. We've spoken a lot about fracking on this show. Is it good? Is it bad? Is it the answer to our energy-related issues? Well, as of yesterday, it looks like the UK government is starting maybe a U-turn. In 2019, a moratorium, a ban was put in place after a series of earthquakes at Quadrilla's fracking site in Lancashire. No more fracking, but that could soon be lifted, given that Business Secretary Kwasi Kwarteng has ordered a review into the ban as part of the UK's new energy strategy, which will be detailed tomorrow. Well, joining me to talk about this is someone else returning to the show, Francis Egan, Chief Executive of Quadrilla, Britain's leading fracking firm. Francis, good to see you on the money. Your firm has invested hundreds of millions of pounds. You've employed hundreds of people over several years preparing sites for fracking. I know you've been through the ringer, as it were, politically. You've been talking to ministers off and on for many weeks and months since that moratorium was put in place. Do you see, from your perspective at least, light at the end of the tunnel?
Well, I'm very pleased that there is going to be a review. I'm somewhat surprised and a little disappointed it's going to take 3 months. I'm not being facetious, but I think it should take about 3 minutes because, as we all know, the science followed the moratorium rather than the other way around. The studies into the induced seismicity were commissioned 3 months after the moratorium was announced. They were actually released more than a year after the moratorium was announced, and they concluded that the seismic events, the so-called earthquakes, were largely imperceptible, their words, not mine, and that the largest event, the 2.9 event that led to the moratorium, or so we're told, generated ground vibrations at half the level allowable in construction sites. So I think the new evidence is in fact already there. I don't know why the BGS are to be given 3 months in the middle of an energy crisis to see what they can dredge up. The government just needs to look at the reports it's already commissioned, unfortunately, after it made the decision and not before.
Things are obviously on the move. Just a few weeks ago, your firm was being ordered to, pour concrete down your wells to stop you ever using them. Now you've got a stay of execution on that. Now you've got Kwasi Kwarteng issuing a review. How quickly, if you did get the green light, how quickly could fracking bring new gas in substantive amounts that could make a difference to the British market?
Well, I think it could bring new gas into the pipelines within about 6 months of us resuming our fracking operations. We've got 2 wells that have been very partially fracked. Both have flowed natural gas and both, if completed, could flow gas into the network. But I think realistically, to make a material difference, it's probably going to take 2 or 3 years. And that's why, frankly, it's so frustrating that we've been not able to do anything since 2019, which is, 2 years ago. If we had been allowed to continue, as frankly we should have been, we could have been making a real difference to UK energy supply today. And the irony of it all is that we're importing shale gas from the United States. Some of my ex-colleagues went back to Houston and are now sending me messages telling me that they're fracking and they're going to send their gas across to me. And we have it here under our feet. So it'll take 2 or 3 years, I think, but we need to start immediately. And that's still a lot quicker than nuclear, which I'm told is going to be the centerpiece of the energy strategy, which will take a decade or more to make any material difference.
Interesting you mentioned the States. We are, of course, importing, as you say, fracked gas from the US. It's turned into liquefied natural gas. It's put in ships. It crosses the ocean. All of that, of course, causes massive carbon emissions. Seems pretty inefficient to me. How serious do you think is the claim that fracking could replicate what the States has managed to achieve? Wholesale gas prices in the States are much lower, even though there's a global market because they've fracked? Could we get to a point where wholesale gas prices in the UK are cheaper than on the continent, say, or significantly cheaper than now, if, again, you were given the green light and that moratorium was lifted?
Absolutely we could. Absolutely we could. The resource is there, and the evidence from the United States. Which, you know, if 10 years ago someone had told you the United States was going to be self-sufficient, not only self-sufficient in gas, but exporting gas to the UK and Europe, you would have been laughed at. You know, people would have said shale will never flow gas. And of course, we're hearing the same stories here again now in the UK. But the geology is not that different. The gas is the same. It's good quality gas. What we need is political staying power and support, and then let private enterprise do the rest.
You're a seasoned observer of politics, Francis Egan. Doesn't the fact that this review has been announced today mean that in tomorrow's document, the energy security strategy we've all been waiting for weeks, there isn't going to be any reprieve for fracking? You're basically being fobbed off with a review because there's going to be nothing for you in tomorrow's big document.
Well, I'd agree with the second bit for sure. There isn't going to be anything material for us in tomorrow's document. Whether being fobbed off or not, time will tell. And it's not us being fobbed off, it's the British consumer being fobbed off. And their bills are landing on their doorstep, as your previous contributors said, in April, and are going to increase again in October. And all indications are that gas prices will stay high for years, if not a decade or more. So, it costs Quadrilla, but it's going to cost the UK consumer a hell of a lot more, this vacillating and continuing to import and pretend all is okay.
Francis Egan, CEO of Quadrilla, UK fracking company. Good to have you on the show, and I look forward to staying in touch as this situation develops. Time now for my daily interview series, Money Talks. Now, many of you might be churchgoers, but can you access details from your church online? Many such churches struggle to create their own websites, but Church Edit reckons it has the answers. Launched in 2003, based in Solihull, Church Edit's run by Managing Director Carl Cottington. Starting as a one-man band, this business, based on website development software, now has 14 employees. Not bad. With its products starting to be used across businesses and schools. And with its software developing daily, Church Edit could be the answer to your local church's prayers. Sorry about that. At least when it comes to dealing with tech. So here he is, Managing Director of Church Edit, Carl Cottington, my latest guest on Money Talks. Carl, great to have you in the studio. You are most welcome. Developing websites for churches, bit niche. How'd you get into it?
Well, I started in 2002, so I was developing my local church website and saw that many churches were struggling to create websites and just seeing how essential websites were going to be. So I started Church Edit as an easy-to-update website builder, so very simple to add unlimited web pages, make changes, not needing any technical experience at all.
That was rare back in 2002-03. Website development was really complicated back then. You had to be a proper nerd.
Yeah, you did, or you have to pay a lot of money to do that. And so Church Edit was launched in 2003, initially for my local church, but quickly other churches heard about it, and it grew really quickly, so that it's now used by churches all around the UK. So it's really simple to do that. And we do all the technical side of things. So we do the hosting, we provide support as well.
That's really interesting. OK, without wishing to stereotype in any way, in general, active church community people, they'll often be older people. They're maybe not so tech savvy. Of course, there are younger people involved. But when you were designing this, did you make it, I wouldn't use idiot-proof, because we know there are lots of silver surfers out there who are very adept on the internet. They've adapted really well. But was it all about simplicity, simplicity, simplicity?
Yes, to update it, I think software has to be, and I think your stereotype is probably I wouldn't agree with in the real life. But there's a whole mixture of people, different ages, but also different abilities. So you do get the people who are kind of tech savvy, but they do want an easy way to create a website. But you also want, there's those people who they use, used Word or something basic like that.
Yeah.
They also need to be able to do that. So always simplicity is key, and that's what we've tried to do, and also continue to do as we've further developed the software.
How tech savvy are churches? How important is it for church communities to have a net presence, to have a website, to be on, say, Twitter or Facebook? We know how important, we often knock the tech giants, social media, but they are really important, aren't they, in galvanising communities? So are you seeing that there is a lot of take-up by churches, or there's still some reluctance?
No, well, I think websites are essential for every organisation, church, business, charity. It's so essential. But in terms of churches, as a Christian, I believe that the church has the most important eternal, hopeful message ever. And whilst that message doesn't change, the way that that's communicated does. And certainly the last 25 years, we've seen the greatest change. And that's because of the internet. So having an effective website in the church context where, you can stream sermons and people can find out more about the church, find out more, who to contact, what events are going on, is certainly really, really key. And social media is certainly, that's not going to go away, and that adds to it as well. And
that streaming, that must have been absolutely vital during lockdown. I know from my own family's experience, it was really hard to get to church. For many, particularly older people, they were scared about going out. A lot of churches just weren't open. Some of them weren't allowed to be open, of course. So their streaming really came into its own. So a lot of what you'd been going on about for, 10, 15 years beforehand, 20 years even, suddenly came, if you like, to fruition, albeit in really tough circumstances.
Yeah, it was tough, obviously, but it did fast forward many charities and churches really quickly. They had to, go from 1 week being in the building to the next week streaming their services and adapting to this whole new world. So, at Church Edit, those first 3 weeks in March 2020 were really, really busy because we had lots of people, using our software and wanting to know
often for the first time.
Yeah, for the first time, and using parts of the software. So, how do we,
streaming functions that they'd never even looked at before, thinking, oh, maybe that might be quite useful.
Definitely.
What's lovely about your story, and obviously we have many, many businesses coming through the On The Money studio. What's a kind of a feature that comes up again and again, a recurring theme, is that somebody was doing something and they realised there was a problem in their own life, they solved it, and then they thought, why can't I solve this for other people too? And sort of the business sort of happened by accident. You didn't set out to start a business, but it just kind of happened.
Yeah, it was something I was passionate about.
Yeah.
And, just seeing it grow the last 20 years. And we've got
a lot of people employed now.
Yeah, we've got a good team based in Solihull. So, and working, with businesses and schools and charities. We also have a donation module, which we've kind of been working on. And so the last 2 years during the pandemic, we've really invested in our software. And just launched a major new drag and drop builder. So I think with software, it
sounds nice and easy, drag and drop. I like the sound of that, plug and play.
It's very easy, yeah. And I think a testament is in terms of our users as well, that it is very simple. But with software, you have to be always innovating. And so, there's obviously a lot of big players out there from, America. And so with this new builder, we're really excited about that we can really compete with those. So it's really exciting. And also saving money for churches as well. It's been calculated that since we started about 19 years ago, we've saved over £2 million.
Because they haven't had to pay for software developers because they've got this bespoke product that they can basically drive themselves.
Yeah, and with our websites, we just charge one low fee. So, the standard or old school way of doing software was you'd pay so much for a release, and then you'd have to pay a couple of months, a year's time for the next release. Whereas when we release any new software, all of our clients get those, without having to pay any more.
Sounds like a great business. Carl Cottington, a pleasure. You are Mr. Church Edit. Best of luck. And stay in touch. It'd be good to see how the business develops. Quickly now, so with some of your views, Malcolm says the amount of tax yield from the latest increases is almost insignificant. compared to COVID handouts, debts, foreign aid, HS2, government NHS waste and mismanagement. Until these issues are sorted out, we are pouring cash down an empty drain. Stuart contacted us, gbviews at gbnews.uk. Why can't we cut government spending? When individuals can't make ends meet, they have to cut spending. But when government needs money, they just pick the pockets of people. And quickly, Elizabeth, not only is this rise politically, oh, there it's gone, I can't actually see that. Thanks for your views today. That's all we've got time for. I'll be back tomorrow at 1 p.m, focusing on the publication of the government's energy security strategy. But for now, this is GB News. I'm Liam Halligan, and that was On the Money.
Europe is in the grip of the most devastating humanitarian crisis since World War II.
The people of Ukraine are facing unimaginable suffering
as their homes are destroyed and their loved ones are killed.
Millions of people are being forced to flee for their lives, carrying only their children, their pets, and the clothes on their back.
The pain, loss and destruction grows by the day.
The people of Ukraine urgently need our help.
Already a vast humanitarian operation is underway. Britain's Disasters Emergency Committee, or DEC, brings together 15 leading aid charities to respond to overseas disasters quickly and efficiently. These charities include the British Red Cross, CARE, Oxfam, Save the Children and World Vision.
Their teams are working on the ground in Ukraine and neighbouring countries to bring vital aid to those who need it most. If you can spare it, your gift to the DEC's humanitarian appeal will go a really long way.
£10 provides essential hygiene supplies for a person for a month.
£50 provides blankets for 4 families.
£100 provides emergency food for 2 families per month.
It's easy to give. You can donate online at dec.org.uk or call the 24-hour donation line on 0370 60 60 900. If you prefer to send a cheque, please post it to the Ukraine Humanitarian Appeal, PO Box 999, London, EC 3A 3AA. To give £10 on your mobile, simply text the word crisis to 70150. Standard network charges apply for calls and you must be 16 or over. Texts are charged at the standard network rate and your £10 donation will be added to your bill.
100% of your donation goes directly to the DEC to save lives and deliver critical support where it's needed.
Hello and welcome to We Need to Talk About on GB News with me, Alex Phillips, where we get stuck into the stories that we should be discussing in depth. Keeping me company today is